Hey everyone, thanks for listening to another episode of Beyond the Alert. Today I have the pleasure of speaking with Eder Ribeiro, Director of Global Incidents Response at TransUnion. Eder, thanks for chatting with me today.
Thanks for having me in. It's a pleasure and an honor to speak to you and your audience.
Likewise, I'm excited about this conversation. So I'm going to dive right in. You've managed incidents for almost a decade, or maybe more. What's the one incident that completely changed how you're approaching incident response today?
Man, it's really hard to say one incident, but I think if the first thing that comes up to my mind earlier in my career, this is, as a responder. So we're talking about a decade now, and we had a third party compromise, and they were not as common back then as they are now. And it was a ransomware third party situation. If I remember correctly, it was Sodi no Kibi, which is a group that doesn't operate anymore in the market, but used to be quite prolific. And they hit an IT provider. I think it was in Mississippi, and overnight 50 something dental surgeons and like veterinarians, that was pretty much, for some reason, this IT provider like really focused on that kind of client. So that was like his entire business. And he held backups for all of them, and they all became encrypted overnight because he just had a non-encrypted RDP connection open, like just kind of all standard configurations. And so we woke up one day and we had a very strong relationship with a carrier in the area, and the claims just blew up that day, for this carrier, and it was all clients of this said IT person. And this was, of course, on a Friday, go figure. And it explodes the day, right? Everyone's hands on deck, and it's going in by Saturday. We also find out that, of course, like claims are going on to, other carriers and other responders are becoming involved. And next thing you know, there's seven different responders, seven different law firms, and the threat actor threw us all in the same chat. And we really had to learn to work together. And at the time, the industry was even smaller. It's a smaller industry now, but it was obviously even smaller then. And everyone's just trying to carve out their name and, their place in it. This is early days of commercial ransomware. So we had to really learn to like play together and to like, appropriately share and to really take a holistic approach to security and incidents. And that was a game changing because early on, everyone was so focused on their thing and what they're doing, and no one was really paying as much attention as to what anyone else is doing because it never really, overlapped. Your operations didn't really tend to overlap with anyone else. We're all doing a lot of the same stuff, but everyone's doing it a little bit different, and which is not any different now. But it was really a game changer to just get so much deep exposure to how everyone else is doing the same services, for lack of better terms. And so that really changed the way that I approach things to this day. I always now come into something, whatever, novel item, with that in mind. That's always kind of a haunting reminder of like, got to look at things, got to take a, if you need to slow down, but it's better to look at things as broad and holistically as you can and really map out the data, really map out where all the nuance is so we can truly understand how we're the most effective. And as who do we have interact with, whether it's our partners directly, whether it's our friends in the market, and who we friendly compete against, and all of that. And that's had a profound impact on how we move, especially because we have a very strong global footprint and we support a lot of commercial and personal lines. And so our footprint's all over the place, whether it's policyholders that the claims that are coming in from US, Canada, Greece, South America, you name it, South Africa. We're getting incidents from all over the place. And so we're often coming into to new environments. We're often coming into, new regulations. We're often coming into new partners. And so that incident became kind of a guiding light. And so that's the one I would say.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point because a lot of other guests bring up the tools and having visibility across all tools, but it's much bigger than that, right? What organizations are coordinating or talking to each other, what impact does that have, including the data security compliance? I mean, interesting.
Right. And visibility on the people. In the end of the day, organizations, countries, teams, it's just people doing their own thing for a common kind of goal, right? And so everyone in the industry is the same thing, whether it's us at TransUnion or, or any other org. So I think sometimes just having visibility into the people as well is such a critical thing that isn't always thought of right away. People want to default to thinking about the tools and thinking just about the ones and zeros. But so much about leading incidents is about the human and not always just the digital. So, we really like to focus on the human as well. We think that's a critical part of cybersecurity incident management, not just the data or the tooling themselves, and we're also responding to incidents, not in a managed services scenario, which also means we know nothing about the client when the client comes in. So we have to undertake an understanding and a discovery journey with every single client every single day, anyways. So that just becomes kind of natural, we've seen so much in the past of folks who do just focus on the digital aspects of it. And I think everyone else is happier and more successful by the end of an incident if we also apply a big focus to the people.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, those are usually the weakest link, right? Because we're only human.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Everyone's susceptible. Everyone can fall for, an attack. We do simulations for that reason, right? If you're tired enough, I think, or stressed enough, even a seasoned security provider could fall for a good enough, especially nowadays with the proliferation of AI based phishing attacks. A lot of that old school stuff that we used to train people on, look for grammar errors, look for syntax errors, language stuff, that's all out the window now, and so now it's almost, we find that we were doing a tabletop last week, and we actually had to spend more time than I thought on kind of retraining the mind of the client of stop looking for those things because you're deferring to, oh well, I see this, I don't see these grammatical errors and that kind of thing, must not be a phishing email. So I see it. You've been getting trained. Well, but I've been getting training every year for years to look out for this stuff. So now you have to retrain people.
If it looks perfect.
Right. If it looks too perfect, trust but verify kind of thing, right? Or a little healthier level of skepticism may be needed, in operations nowadays. So it's we're in an interesting, I think, impasse when it comes to security and the humans right now.
For sure. We get the question a lot, especially at conferences of, do you guys replace humans from the practitioners who aren't get used to what it is that we do and how we help and say never because we need both, right? What's of both worlds is AI, where it makes sense, and the human, because humans understand the strategy, they have the empathy, they understand humans better.
Absolutely, absolutely. And in the end of the day, like I mentioned earlier, organizations are just a bunch of people doing things. And so whoever it is you're interacting with on the other side, it's a group of people doing things. So the machine is not at a place, at least yet, it's not at a place where it has true insight into likely what those other people or that group of people want. And without that, you lose so much of, true business. And the bots are great at doing super repeatable transactional, stuff, which is why they're so popular, right? How many times in so many roles people, spend hours a day doing things that are just repeatable, that, the stuff that they kind of check out for a little bit, but their subconscious does it because now it's so kind of muscle memory. Yeah, the bot's great at doing that stuff, but that's not everything that one does at their job in pretty much almost any job. And that's why you're not seeing, at this point, you're not seeing, I think, like AI adoption at that level. The technology is just not there yet, but who knows? It's growing at such rate, maybe Ultron will be here sooner than we think. I don't know.
How do you build trust with executive leadership when they need to make $1 million decisions based on the incident assessment in the middle of the night?
Not in that moment. Trust takes time. And so you have to build trust over time. And I think as the security professionals, we have to be professionals. We have to stay on top of things. Or we have to stay sharp and we have to be proactive. And that also means proactive with empathy, but proactive with courage. The executives don't know this stuff, right? With exception of your CISO, your CTOs, whatever, but the rest of your executives will not know this stuff. So when I talk to my EVP or when I talk to our president, one, have the empathy to remember that they have duties that are not just cyber or privacy or whatever it is that exactly it is that you're doing. I think this is something, a concept that spans across really anything that's specialized. So one, have the empathy to know that they don't know this and they rely on you for it. And so also then look to remember that a professional needs to be able to teach, for lack of better terms, instruct. And instruction is better received by the way that the audience is ready to receive it, not by the way that the teacher is ready to give it. So break it down. I've been in the military for 19 years and change now. And in the army, we used to have the saying in the infantry that sometimes I had to break stuff down Barney style. That's often what you have to do with very senior leadership when it comes to cyber. These are, but the ones and zeros, these binary issues, they're not going to get it. So you have to come ready, break it down to whatever level it is that they need. And if it's Barney style, it's Barney style, and do it with empathy because they have to make very important decisions that take into account variables that we will not know. And, you know, their operational lane is very different than ours. Therefore, like also, you know, don't be arrogant. I think sometimes security leaders can, have a little bit of a, well, I know all the stuff about this, but now I have to go and spend my time teaching somebody or talking to somebody that sits above me on the ladder about this stuff. And I just want to get it done or move on. But, remember that like they see things that you're not seeing either. So yeah, that's my approach to that.
Great answer. A teacher's only good if a teacher can teach the people they're teaching in the way that they need, right? Otherwise,
Yeah, exactly. I think trust is, of course, we all take leaps of faith, especially when it comes to trust, right? Trust is earned, not, given type of thing. Yeah, absolutely. But where does it start, right? Like, there's got to be a big bang. So somebody's got to take a leap. And so I think it's something that you build up over time and it's something you come into, you want to build early on. And if you can build trust, then when that moment happens, now you have trust already established. And that would make life, I think, a lot easier for a lot of folks. I know from my experience that when those tough moments happen, because we spend so much time in building trust with internally, it's a lot easier to get a point across. And if that moment when you can't go super 10 levels deep, or that moment when your message might not be as tailored as you want for that audience, they're also going to be more empathetic to the fact that like they need to listen to you now, and now is the moment, and now the action needs to take, and now this advice needs to be listened to or acted on. And if you want that to be the outcome, you got to start earlier than in that moment.
for sure. I think the arrogance comes in as well when people are insecure and they're trying to kind of position themselves as being very secure, right? And then it's the snowball effect.
Yeah, absolutely. Somebody said something the other day. God, I wish I had the quote like super tight in my head, but it was something like, true experts rarely ever speak in absolutes or with, you know, impeccable confidence. And in this world, how could you? Right? The technology is evolving so fast. There's so much out there from a data perspective, from a security perspective. I don't think any one person in a large enterprise knows every single node, knows every single endpoint and the status of anything. It's impossible, and therefore it's unwise and a bit arrogant to come to the table with with that kind of positioning of being infallible, for lack of better terms. I think we all need to remember that, we're likely to make mistakes and that things could change. We may not see every variable, right? Approach things with a bit of humility, I think is always wise.
For sure. So, what is the hardest leadership lesson that you've learned while managing an incident that was spiraling out of control?
I think it's a combination of things. I think having the humility to accept that things are sometimes starting to spiral. I live by this mantra of like control the controllables. I say this all the time, and my staff is sick of hearing it. My wife's probably sick of hearing it.
I use it too. That's why I'm laughing. My better half is like, really again? Come on.
Right. And it's just one of those things. Like there are some things you can't control and you just got to let go of that and make your peace with it. And sometimes incidents come with variables that policy that clients may bring to you or other stakeholders may bring to you that you just cannot control. And you need to wrap your head around it. You need to try to understand your best how it'll likely play out and what implications those variables will cause. But that's all you can do. And you need to make sure that you have an eye on them but you keep moving and you keep, and you keep things in motion. So, I think that's one of the biggest things is because sometimes we find that clients may, especially when you're in the respond business, we're not in the managed service business. We don't have a previously existing relationship to that end client. So I don't know their environment fully. We had a situation that not too different from that a couple months ago where one of my analysts calls me into a call because, we it did the normal scoping with the client. We went through all the normal stuff. We conducted the investigation. We're working, and the day before the debrief, the final debrief call had been scheduled. We are providing, interim updates all throughout it, all the normal stuff. Out of nowhere, we get a call from their counsel, and their counsel's like, "So, by the way, we just learned that they unplugged from the network day zero these 5 servers, and these 5 servers are rich with personal information. And of course, they're completely air gapped. So, no resources we put it digitally could have seen these systems. And so, of course, we got blindsided with this information. Of course, everything starts to quote unquote fall apart, right? Because now council's worried, what are we going to do about these regulatory deadlines? Like, what are we going to do? Now we have to update regulators. There's no way we're going to wrap the investigation in 24 hours the way we thought we were going to wrap. We now have X amount of hours more of investigation to do, right? And so in those moments, it's important to remember some of those lessons. It's like, okay, well, we know what we know. There are likely going to be things that we don't know. Let's stay humble through it. Let's reset. Let's take a step back. Let's refigure out what this means. Let's try to then address all these variables. And let's get everyone together. Let's not point fingers and let's just do what we can to get the job done. And yes, things got delayed by 3 days, but it got done and we managed to get tens upon tens of hours work done in 3 days, and everyone was happy as they could be. And it is what it is, right? But in the end of the day, that's what it comes out to. When stuff starts spiraling out of control what you can control, wrap your head around what you can't control, and then just do your best by everything that and hopefully you are, you built yourself up and your team to a place where, you are true professionals and you know enough that if you're sticking to the best that you can do on everything, you will have a good outcome.
For sure. So then how do you develop future IR leaders when most training will focus on technical skills instead of judgment calls?
Oh man, with time, first and foremost, I'm a true believer in growing folks in house and with time. And my right hand here, I took her right out of undergrad. She's been with us for years. And I actually started, before we were acquired by TransUnion, we were a smaller company called Cyberscout, and there I started there as an intern. And so my direct leader now took a shot at me, when I was still in school, and here we are, 10 plus years now later. Shout out to Matt. Besides, taking shots and chances on folks, yeah, development takes time. It takes time. It takes repetition. You have to takes exposure. I don't think it's appropriate for me to put somebody out there to deal with our clients directly and give them that level of trust that they're going to own incidents and going to be successful at it. Right. A week in, a month in, you have to come to us with a lot of experience for a quick kind of turnaround training. I want to see how you respond to situations with different types of stakeholders, whether it's claims folks, whether it's, the client, whether it's counsel, whether it's whoever, whether it's the threat actor. A lot of these guys try to push your buttons and I want to know how you react as a human to things. So training, I think is something that needs to be done methodically. I think it needs to be done with empathy and care, and I think it needs to be done over time. And you slowly but surely then kind of let folks really mature in what you need them to be. I think it's very rare to find that unicorn that just plugs and plays, and I never expect that anyone I bring in house is that unicorn, even if it seems so at first, because what we do is too nuanced, and there's too many variables. Therefore, I don't think it's reasonable to truly think that I can just, bring somebody in and they're good to go in a month or two and perfect. Yeah, no, I don't think that's how it works. You know,
Makes perfect sense.
I like to think so, but who knows?
But that's the difference between a leader who invests in their team, right? And leads by example versus someone who just pulls folks in and may or may not think that they're the best thing since sliced bread and the team is just there to take the hit when things go wrong, and when things go well, you take the reward, right?
Yeah, I think it's the opposite, right? And maybe that's the military man in me, but one of the best things that I think come out of serving our country is really the leadership exposure. We have some of the yeah, I think we have the greatest leaders in the military, and of course, I'm biased towards the army because I've been in it for forever. But I've had such great leadership there, and it's given me so many life lessons and leadership lessons, and they translate. It's the skill that translates the most, I would say, out of anything. And the reality is that it should be the opposite. I'm the one that's there to take the hits. If a hit needs to be taken, I need to take that hit, not my like folks on the at the ground level. Absolutely. It's on me to feel those pains and to take that hit and to, lay down the sword, right? That's my job. And so I always say to folks when I'm interviewing them often, or especially after I bring in, and so my team hears this all the time, but I view that my job as a leader is to be a generator of agency and freedom. If I can give my people the freedom to be happy and to operate and to blend, especially in cyber, we have, and as a responder, you have to blend your personal life into the job. They all become kind of one in some ways. It's very hard to have like balance in doing what we do. It's just not there. It's inherently just not there. Holidays, yeah, good luck. That kind of thing can be a big drain. So if I can provide the most agency that for my people on a day-to-day basis, I think that leads to like successful outcomes as a leader when it comes to the people on the team. So that's a big my philosophy.
Love that approach. So that I'm dying to ask you, I've had so many guests on the podcast who have military background. First of all, thank you for your service. It sounds like you firmly believe that that does really make a difference in terms of having the right approach to leadership and being able to move the needle there, just from that experience.
Yeah, I mean, you can become a great leader without being in the military, right? Let's get that straight. Of course, I've met plenty of great leaders. I have great leaders here who I report to at TransUnion who never put the uniform on. So it's not a prerequisite for sure. But for those who do choose to take that leap, I do think that that's probably one of the biggest benefits is that you get exposed to amazing leaders, and there's so many insights that will, if you're willing, of course, to learn them, it can be truly life changing.
And the process of how to build the future leaders, right? I think that's just as important that if you don't have that background, right? I don't have that background. You have to figure it out as you're doing it.
Right, right, right. And we're all so dependent on each other still. It's yes, we don't just share all of our knowledge via storytelling anymore. We have the internet and we have books, but here we are also on the internet telling stories and sharing knowledge. Right. So it's funny how that works. But in the end of the day, great leaders most of the time, I think, are built based on exposure they have to other great leaders. Are there, of course, exceptions to any rule? Of course there are. So there, of course, will be great leaders that arise and never had great leaders and still figured out how to be a great leader, and of course, but I think on average, and when I meet great leaders and I talk to them about their path and what kind of mentors they had and the impact that those people had on them, I think that's a common denominator.
Absolutely. So at what moment in an incident does the lawyer in you override your security brain?
Ooh, never anymore. Anymore. In the early days, I don't know. I'm a lot more disciplined now, and in my experience, so I think we're at a place where we know our lanes very well, and also the legal side of cyber response is now so evolved, and our counsel partners are so good at what they do that they're on top of it. I don't need to do it. I think it's a big help. I think it helps me speak to them at their language, but it's not something where it overrides anymore.
Because you've built that trust across the departments. Great. So our last guest, Steve Fridakis, CISO in residence at Sideris, left you this question. What is the data suggesting beyond the controls, as in what could be happening that you haven't seen yet?
Oof, that's a great question. Yeah, I think data is now the new perimeter, especially with AI usage. I think data in itself is becoming a control, so that part's really hard to answer. But when I think about data, when thinking about, okay, what can I suggest beyond the controls? What are we not seeing? I've been doing a lot of research on AI risks and claims that are arising from AI usage and AI vulnerabilities. Prompt injection, I would say it's probably the most common one I'm seeing right now across enterprise level, but we're not seeing ton of prompt injection incidents happen at mid-market and below and small businesses. But I think, the more, but yet it's being sold, right? You can just get that Copilot bundle add-on or whatever bundle add-on to your business suite and have access to these tools that aren't just the same general open tools. So it's kind of in a gray zone. It's not the same GPT or whatever LLM that you're just kind of, the public at large is using it, but it's not a full in-house enterprise hosted solution either, or, just cloud hosted for that enterprise. So you're kind of in this gray zone. And so I think what getting serious about knowing what your data is with the knowledge that your data is going to be directly under attack because of some of these tools and their ability to tap the data. Because in order for them to be useful to you, they have to have access to the data. But now the data is always what's being attacked. But normally you have to go through this escalation of perimeter to inside, escalate, privilege escalation, yada, 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 before you can get to the data. So the threat actor path to the late data, I think, is a lot more linear now. And so my suggestion would be get serious about where your data is, what your data is, and what's plugged or what can touch your data. That would be my suggestion.
Awesome. Thank you. Your turn. What is one question you would ask the next IR SOC leader that we bring on the show?
What is your philosophy of increasing the pool of knowledge within the entire team when it comes to novel subjects?
That's a good one.
Because I think the AI thing is a perfect example of it, right? Like, if you went to school 5 years ago, you probably didn't hear much about LLMs from a cybersecurity or a forensics perspective, for those courses or whatever, or an instant response aspect, but it's inevitable now. So,
Thank you. Such a pleasure speaking with you today, Eder. I think you have a very, very humble approach to security and your team. I think it's absolutely fantastic. So, how can people connect with you? Where can they find you if they want to say hi?
yeah, absolutely. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect with folks and talk to people there. We do a lot of thought leadership work, so you might see me online here and there. If you're in the IR and cyber insurance industry, you might see me at some conferences and things of that sort. And you can find my information through the TransUnion IR pages as well.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining me today.
You're welcome. Thank you. It's been an honor and a pleasure.